What Ike Allen and Andy Anderson have created at AVAIYA is what the world needs.
Hello, AVAIYA family. I'm Andy Anderson. My partner, Ike Allen, and I are teachers, mentors, and the co-owners of AVAIYA University. AVAIYA is the creator of over 1,000 books, films, courses, teachings, and other supportive resources. Thank you so much for joining us today. Our fellow teacher, Sarah Griffiths, is with us today to talk about how it's not your fault. Sarah is an award-nominated businesswoman who has previously established several businesses. Originally from the UK, she is now based in Western Australia. For the last 4 years, she has worked as a very specialized hypnotherapist, using her unique gift and knowledge of the subconscious to help people heal from the devastating impact of childhood trauma and totally transform themselves in every aspect of their lives. Welcome to AVAIYA, Sarah.
Oh, thank you so much.
Great to have you here. And I would love it. I didn't read too much about you in your bio because I really wanted you to share a little bit more about your story yourself. So I know you have a very interesting story of how you got into doing what you do today. And I'm curious if you could just get us started by sharing about that.
Yeah, sure. So, I mean, like a lot of people who work in this healing space, especially the holistic healing space, I got into it. It was my own healing journey. And when I started, let me think, probably 7, 8 years ago on my own journey, I didn't have a clue. I didn't have a clue about childhood trauma or anything like that. I just knew that in the past and in my adult life then, I had lots of things that were going on, lots of behaviors that showed up, triggers, thought patterns, things that I realized were repetitive and were not helpful. I didn't understand all the ways that they were negatively impacting my life. But I did get to the point where I understood these are very serious. They are having a serious impact. I need to try and understand what these things are, why I have them, and most importantly, what to do about them. And the most important thing, the biggest trigger for me was back in October 2010. I can't believe it was that long ago now. I mean, that's 12 years ago. I said 7 years. Wow, it's 12. I nearly committed suicide. You have to understand that to do that, someone really has to be desperate. You have to be thinking there is no way out. I absolutely have no way to improve my life, to get away from what I'm thinking, feeling, and experiencing. And it's amazing to me when I look back that I actually got to that point. And it was really just a split-second decision that meant that I didn't actually go through with that because I was in the process. But it did start me off on this whole healing, discovery, growth journey, which has got me to where I am today. So yeah.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you sharing a bit about how you got to where you are today and about that moment that has led you to helping other people, right, get through difficult times. And I'm curious, since you focus so much on childhood trauma, like what is your experience of how childhood trauma can link up to codependency later in life? Like how does that come to be?
Yeah, and that's really interesting. And the reason I wanted to call this talk, It's Not Your Fault, is because it's something that I so often say to my clients, because their details might be different, but really everyone's journey to some degree is the same, that we are all on a journey. And what a lot of people don't realize is that we're on a journey to find our authentic selves, because as children, unless we're really lucky with our parents who are very switched on and self-aware, we're taught to follow rules and to conform. And the subconscious, the job of the subconscious is to keep us safe. And as children, the only way we can keep ourselves safe is by setting aside our true selves and conforming. So we become codependent. It's a natural process as children. We are naturally codependent to survive. But what happens is that then outgrows its usefulness in our adult lives. But because it's embedded in the subconscious, number one, we don't even know that that is what has happened. And because it's habitual, it's rules, it's programs, it's patterns, and we don't know it, we don't recognize it. and we don't know how to overcome it. So really, it's abuse in childhood, not just abuse. Abuse makes it worse, but childhood in general, and our need to survive, to connect, to belong, just to survive, leads to codependency to some degree. Most of us just get over it. But when a child has been abused, like with a narcissistic parent, the need to belong, to be accepted, for approval, for connection, it doesn't go away, because the adult never had it as a child. So they continue striving for it as an adult, and it's not available. They're never going to get it. And it's this realization that helps people realize where their codependency has come from and what they have to do to break it. That's a mouthful, I know, because it's such a huge topic, but so many people, even people who've been in therapy for years, don't understand where this codependence is created and how they lost their authenticity and why. And the fact that as adults, they no longer need to not be them true selves. And it starts us on this whole journey to reconnect with who we really are. And some people will say to me, well, I have no recollection of that. I don't know who I really am. I've always been a people pleaser. I've always done what others wanted. And I'm like, that's really great, because you get to choose. You get to choose. You have a blank canvas. And as an adult, you can actually start to say, who do I want to be? And then it's the journey to let go of that codependency, which is a survival mechanism. Really, it's a primal survival mechanism that we no longer need as adults, but runs our adult lives.
Yeah. So thank you for sharing about that. It's so interesting, because it is a necessity when we're so little that obviously we are 100% dependent on someone taking care of us for our survival, and just recognizing how natural that is. And yet, like what you said, right? A lot of us get over it, right? If we had great parenting or great people around us to help support us, yes, we gradually kind of became more and more independent, and yet still wanted to connect and all that. But how the trauma can get in the way of that. You mentioned the subconscious in there, and I want to dive deeper into that. What led you to realize the significance of the subconscious in healing from codependency, childhood trauma, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so it was really because you have to understand that my own experience. And I was having some therapy sessions with a psychologist that weren't really getting me anywhere. And I remember, because I was in a long narcissistic marriage, and I remember mentioning to her and saying, look, I have worked out that I am in a toxic codependent relationship. What on earth should I do with that? How do I deal with this? What shall I do? And she was so surprised that I kind of came to that conclusion by myself, that she literally didn't know what to do with me. And I thought, this is ridiculous. This is useless. Like, I have to find another way. There has to be another way. And I started to research, and I think I was just putting into Google faster ways to heal from trauma, faster ways to personal development. And the subconscious started to come up. And at first I was very dismissive. I was like, oh, load of rubbish. Can't be bothered with all of that. But it kept coming up. And so I would follow snippets, and I started to follow a few key people in the space. And over a period of a few months, I just thought it started to really affect me. And I could see the truth in what was being spoken as I started to apply things and realize the changes that I could make. So it was just, you know what it is? It's like the universe shows up and says, this is what you need. And when you say, no, it's not, it keeps pointing you in that direction. Mm-hmm. And really over a few months, I really got into it. And then I thought, I really need to learn how to do this. So I learned how to become a hypnotherapist. But aside from that, I did thousands of hours of learning about trauma, the impact of child development. So because I knew that's what I wanted to specialize in, and I could really see how the role of the subconscious was very key. and it really made sense to me as well, because if it wasn't key, and if traditional talk therapy was, and I'm not anti-talk therapy, it has its place, and healing from trauma, it's very limited, because all the programs are being held in the subconscious, and that is where we have to do the work. So it's very limited. And if it's not very limited, why are there literally millions of people in the world who, despite years of therapy, cannot overcome their childhood trauma, their CPTSD? They can't change their patterns, their behavior, etc. And yet within a few hypnotherapy sessions, it totally changes their perspective. So it was really when I started to see the results as well that backed up what I was thinking and feeling. And for me, it totally changed my life. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing a little bit more about that. And I'm curious, you mentioned in there also that you were in a narcissistic marriage, and I'd love you to share a little bit more about that. So, right, you were in this marriage, you eventually broke free from it. Any suggestions that you can share with people who might be in that same scenario, who feel stuck, who aren't sure if they should leave or afraid to leave and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. I think the most important thing, there's a couple here. Number one is taking responsibility. So, and I know some people will say, oh, you're victim shaming. No, I'm talking about myself here. I made massive changes in my life when I took responsibility, when I stopped blaming my past and everything else. And I can't say I stopped blaming my husband, because his behaviors were appalling, but I was allowing it. So it was when I took that responsibility and I said, if anything is going to change, I have to change it. So it's realizing that has to happen. But also the other aspect of that is so many people get stuck because the narcissistic person, it's insidious. We know it reduces, it diminishes, it takes away everything about yourself. And it's when you understand that the person who you think is this all-powerful, all-knowing, narcissistic bully in your life, that's a very weak person, a person who is codependent. We only diminish and demean what we fear, and when you understand that, it really changes everything. But again, there's this whole other part that comes into play, where the subconscious will tell you that you need this person to survive. It's all about this connection, this codependence, and it's understanding and being able to overcome that, see it for what it is, so that when you get those thoughts, those feelings, you can ignore them and get past them. It's very complex, don't get me wrong. That's really scratching the surface of a very deep and very big subject, but don't think that you can't get free. That will happen when you take responsibility and get the help, get the help you need to change your thoughts, your processes, and to rewire these programs that are running. But reduce the way you see the narcissist. They are a very small, scared, empty person, and understanding that really, really helps.
Right. Yeah. Thank you. I appreciate you sharing those tips. That's really helpful for people who might be in that scenario right now. And is there anything else you could share about how you broke free from your own codependency? Obviously, you mentioned the hypnotherapy and how much that helped you. Anything else you want to share about that?
I think it's like everything. Everything that we do in our lives, the most important part of our lives is